Hey guys, so today I'm going to be doing a critique hour on the Elemental design part 2, and I wanted to start off really quickly by opening up Portrait Studio and taking a look at how Portrait Studio can help us set up a luminescent character. So it's basically going to be a step-by-step tutorial on how I got it to look like it's glowing, which is the effect that I'm going to be covering for the remainder of the submissions for the challenge. Okay, so we're going to start off by disabling the direct light, so the directional light. This is the light that is basically allowing us to see the object in this space. It's like the universal light. You want to do that first, then you want to change the background color to black. Obviously, one of the biggest conditions for a glowing object is having a dark light environment. You won't see the object anymore, and that's fine. Okay, so now what we're going to be doing is, once you've opened the primary model's options, right there on the right, so every model that you bring in has an options drop down menu arrow on the option of the name, right beside the name, and you can just click and open that. You can also close it if you want to, if it's getting too crowded, if you have more than one object. Okay, so you want to get the model white because that's how we get an object to glow in a dark environment. It has to enter no man's land values. So you want to change the model's emission color to white, or any other color, honestly, whatever color you want. And then you want to increase the model emission strength right there, emission intensity. You want to raise that up, and then the object will start glowing. And that's one of the things that a lot of you missed out, is that you showed too much detail on the surface of the character. And what that will do, what that leads to, is when we have too much detail, we have dark values. That's why I say use gray tones when you are working with portraits, because when you're using high contrast, you're basically telling me the object is glowing. Objects that glow have no detail. Like, try taking a picture of the sun, you're not going to get any detail in the sky around. The values are just too high to promote surface detail, which requires midtones. So what you want to do is raise that up as far as possible until, not all the way, you don't want a silhouette, but you want to see some surface detail as to suggest that it's not purely high magnitude nuclear blast type of glow. And now on the left in the indirect lighting tab, so let me show you how to get there. It's just basically lighting and then lighting settings, and then you click left. On the left arrow you open up a new menu. This is where you find background color, this is where you find HDR effects, rotation, ambient light, all that business. And you want to enable bloom in the indirect lighting tab. So you click that becomes enabled, and just take a look at that. Instantly blooms, that's the outward glow. A lot of you missed that as well in your submissions. I'm not sure why you guys don't allow for references to affect the outer areas of the object, not just the inner parameters of the edges of the character. Light glows, light offers energy, light is larger than the singular source it's from. It promotes heat, it emits heat. So that's the heat that we're creating, that feeling of energy. And so you want to bring tolerance. Tolerance is a really tricky one because the higher you raise tolerance, the less bloom you have. It's just like tolerance that you would see in a lasso tool or a magic wand. You want to just lower the tolerance so you get more bloom, meaning the tolerance for the spread of the bloom, to explain it as simply as possible. And the tolerance determines at what point a value should be affected by the bloom effect. So we want to mess around with the size to increase the spread, and then maybe jump back into tolerance, and then you just mess around with these different settings. So if you raise size all the way up but lower tolerance, you get kind of a really, really like emanating, chunky, cute thing. But I still like it, especially if we mess around with the details. So right now it looks a little bit chunky, but if you give her some clothing, if you give her a piece of cloth, which we will be bringing in the upcoming update, if you give her a gesture, it'll look a lot different when you raise the tolerance or lower the tolerance all the way down. So you're bringing up the size to increase the spread and distance of the effect, and then you want to strength adjust the overall intensity of the bloom. So again, this just changes the way the shape behaves. So much heat is emanating outside of the object is now morphing into a new shape. It's a massive size. Okay, and then there's a really, really cool trick we can do. So we're going to add color to this. And I've told you guys before, the source object, and I'm going to be doing this in today's critique, hopefully if I see any opportunity to show it, the source object value can be bright, but the glow, which is the bloom or the outer rim or whatever pattern or however you want to layer it, can be a different color. So you want to change the global rim light to a secondary color value, and that's where you're going to get something interesting happening. I know you guys probably say, Istebrak, you're asking us for a glowing object. It's only so many colors we can mess around with, and usually only blue really looks good that bright, or green. Red kind of looks weird, looks more like neon because red is such a dark primary. So what you want to do is always bring in a secondary color plus white to get that cool effect, and that's pretty much what the sun is. The secondary color is yellow. The pure glow, high magnitude color of the sun is white. It's an off-white, but it's white enough for us. So you want to raise that blue by lowering the rim fall off bar, and just look at that. When we raise it, when we lower it down all the way, you get that beautiful effect. And you can change this color to any color you want. It's really amazing. You can also change the emission color, which is also really, really interesting. It gives us an interesting effect. And if you feel like it's too much white, you want to see more color, you can lower the bloom as well to get more of what you kind of want, if you want something in the middle. I really like the pink one because it's got this like magical iridescence to it. And when I assigned this this challenge, something really interesting came up. Is a lot of you don't know the different varieties of glow that you have. I mean, you have a lot of colors at your disposal, and they can combine in all kinds of cool ways. You can have a red source value with a blue emission color. You can have, all kinds of stuff. Really, you can mess around with it a lot. So if you guys were having trouble, like this one, for instance, would be perfect for the magma character that we were looking at. Maybe a little bit brighter, actually, in the strength of the emission strength. Maybe closer to white in the source color. That way you can get that pure white of the magma. That's really, really friggin' cool. So a lot of you own Portrait Studio. A lot of you worked with this challenge, and you didn't really take advantage of this resource. This is why this resource is so amazing, is that it offers you endless combinations of settings to create all kinds of environments. Okay, so I want to show you guys how to add fog as well, which is really cool. A lot of you with your designs added in an extra secondary light that's glowing nearby the character, some kind of magical attachment. In order to do that, don't touch any more settings on the model. You have to go into the main lighting tab, which is just a left menu, click back into the first lighting tab. It just says lighting. This is the main stuff like universal, secondary, camera light. So you want to turn on a point light. So I already have this set up. I'm going to show you how I did it. And so this nearby object, it starts in fog in Portrait Studio is linked to the point lights, which are the secondary lights. And you want to turn that on. You want to enable the indicator. It might start a little bit high in your Portrait Studio, so just scroll back, zoom back, and click find it. It usually is defaulted as with indicator on. And you want to move it down using the menu tab. So, you click on it, you get these arrows. You can use the arrows to move it. So they work on X, Y, Z. And then just position it wherever you need it. I like it to the left a little bit, to the right actually, sorry. You want to enable the volumetric option. And you want to just mess around with density. You can look at my settings and copy them. I'm almost at 50% density, which is how much fog we're getting, how thick the fog is. The scatter is how much patterns we see in between the fog. If there's zero scatter, there isn't any space or breathing room between the fog. And then we've got the magnitude, which is the texture level when we are actually, what texture level we're seeing during the fog's movement. Really just depends on how you guys, your computers perform with this, but this is exactly how to create this setting. I like a little bit less magnitude, a little bit more magnitude, just less breathing room, thicker fog. It really feels like the room is like full of that glow effect. And remember, it really, you didn't have an environment option. You weren't allowed to create environments in your glowing scenes, but you were allowed to bring in minimal representation of surrounding environment pertaining to the character's narrative. So if it's a glowing character, if she's a magma creature, if she's a glowing sky creature, whatever kind of elemental, whatever environment she's from, I always recommend minimal surrounding space. And fog is a wonderful, everyone knows how amazing fog is for artists. It's a wonderful way to fill a room up. You are getting some minor shadows because you have to turn off the glow though. You have to lower the glow, so we're only getting the fog. You have to turn off the glow of the secondary light. You can't, the secondary light, when you turn it on, it has to, it's going to throw off shadows on the main character that you have. So you want to turn off those shadows, not the shadows, you want to turn off the light of the point light. So you want to just lower that point light strength all the way down, so we're not really getting any glow, but we're still getting the fog technically. So raise the strength all the way up to have a look, so that you see how it's affecting the character. We don't want it to affect the character, and so we are lowering the strength of the secondary point light all the way down to 0. Turn the bloom back on. Oh, not all the way down to 0, because 0 will turn off the fog, just all the way down enough that it's not affecting our glowing character. And you want to turn the bloom back on, and there you have it. You can turn off the indicator. We don't even need that secondary light. So if you want it to glow, you can have it glow. You can introduce it in your own, your reference doesn't have to have all the elements, because we're trying to work with limitations in Portrait Studio. If you want it to glow, you can have it glow. And you can turn off the indicator, press on any negative space nearby to turn off the controls, and there you go. You guys have your fog, you have your glow. If you want to increase the glow of the elemental, the bloom, the strength, that'll actually just bring in some really, really cool effects as well, like the size. Obviously, like, you're going to lose a lot of space when you do this. Really bad character design, but I want you guys to notice how it's pure white on the inside. On the rim where the temperature decreases of the glow is where we start bringing in color, and that is yellow, which is the brightest color, second to white, in the color wheel. And then we start seeing the mid-tone color, which is the iridescence color, the tertiary color, or the secondary color technically, or tertiary element in your palette that brings in that cool variety. And this can be any color you want. It can be blue, it can be green, it can be, God, you have so many options to mess around with. And then of course you have your themes to dress it, you have your costumes to dress it, you have your you have so many options that take this to the next level, but Portrait Studio has gotten you like 70% of the way, that there's zero mistake making. And this was really what I was looking for in your elemental character designs. Okay, so I wanted to also really quickly show you guys how I pose her as well. So I want to make sure that she's posed in the right kind of position, and make sure your enhanced lighting is off. You really don't need enhanced lighting on. If you are just dealing with one object, if you're dealing with secondary objects bouncing on each other, if you're dealing with bounce light of any kind, subsurface scattering, you want to turn on enhanced lighting. But right now we're dealing with such minimal surface effects, you don't need enhanced lighting on. So this should be very, very easy on all your computers. So you want to just left click on the name of the model you have open and click on Show Joints if you don't already have them on. And you want to, so I changed mine to blue because I really like blue. And I'm just going to pose her using the controls. So I'm going to click on the shoulder, and I'm going to just browse through my controls. So we have Q, we have W, E, R. So W is position, so where it's going to be. E is the movement of the joint on a circular, like a circumference around the joint actually moving in its spot. It's not changing position. So the arm is moving, but the joint is the source. And this is the size. So you can click on the white center to move the entire size of the arm, or you can click on any one of the joints axes, X, Y, or Z, to increase along that axis so it makes the rectangle wider. So I'm going to click on E, and that's how I'm going to move and pose her. And you can get a reference and you can do this. There's just all kinds of things you can do to help you choose like a really, really convincing pose. So the fingers are posable at the moment, but they're not the, at the best that they can be, and there's tons of updates coming up soon in Portrait Studio, as well as a complete menu change. So I know you guys may have gotten used to how Portrait Studio looks right now, but the updates, I promise you, are a lot more user-friendly, and you get Control Z is in the works because it's very complicated. You guys move through a lot of controls that we have to keep tracked for a Control Z, but it's programmable. I was already finished it. We just are hesitant about releasing it just because we want it to be perfect. But everything else that we promised is coming up. I promise you guys, the longer we take, the better it looks, and we just want it to look its best. Okay, so I'm just going to give her like a floating X-Men kind of pose, like she's weightless, and the way to create weightless feeling is to let the feet drop. I also really, really like when the chest is high, but the head is, I also want to give her a longer neck, so I'm going to use the, actually that's going to just increase the size of her head. I'm going to use the W control, and I'm just going to increase the size of her neck. She is otherworldly, she is a humanoid. I also want to make her neck thinner and her head thinner. And then I want to just tilt her head down. So it may look weird in other angles when you're looking at your character through other angles. Like, let me just rotate her. It may look weird in this angle, but I really don't care as long as it looks good in the angle I'm looking at. And as long as it doesn't look like completely like non-human. But because she's a humanoid, I really get to mess around with how she looks. And I'm just using the center axis. Instead of moving the whole scene, I'm just going to move her. Kind of getting like a Sailor Moon type of effect. Maybe she's got her arm out, but a light kind of fall to her wrist. Maybe her head is tilted curiously. Or maybe I'm just going to move the arm down actually, just so it looks a little bit more like a character design, like a standing character design. Something I really like to do for the female characters is I like to like kind of mess around with their hip position, because women have hips and they use them. So I like when they feel asymmetrical. Oops, wrong control. So she's kind of like got that tilt in the hips, and then a way to get her feeling like she's leaning on one leg is to tilt the whole body with the last axis before the pelvic axis that moves the entire body, to tilt the whole thing down, and then use the pelvic axis to tilt it back up to straight, and then you get that asymmetrical hip position. And then I'm just going to put the legs back forward, and she's kind of got that tilt. Maybe she's doing like an airwalk, so you have one arm in the back. And then you click back with left click on the female mannequin, and then you hide joints. Okay, and then we go back to the emission color. So there's the emission strength, like the whiteness of it, which is nice, but it's just not really good for character design. And then there's the color itself, which is so much fun to mess around with. And you can wait and see whichever scene looks best for you. Click on the little screenshot icon, and you have your reference, or you can just get green shot like I do and just take one particular area. But we wanted to give you guys an option to take screenshots right out of Portrait Studio. It saves to the desktop. And if you want to save this entire scene, you just go to Files and Save as New. Give it a name, so Glowing Elemental, and it'll save for you permanently. Big warning, because the entire setup is going to be changed for the upcoming Portrait Studio, you won't be able to transfer your old save files into the new Portrait Studio. We're trying not to let this happen, but it's a possibility. And again, we promise you it's going to be an amazing innovation for Portrait Studio, this upcoming update. And you still have it. It's still the same power. It's just settings are reorganized, look a little bit better. Menu looks a little bit better. And you can always recreate your scenes with even better options that you couldn't do before. So for instance, the batching. So yeah, you have the option to save this entire scene and open it up for the current model. You'll also be able to save for the future versions of Portrait Studio. You just can't share save files in between versions, just like you wouldn't in old versions of Photoshop versus new versions of Photoshop when it comes to brushes or something like that. I think brushes you can, so that's a bad example. So let's get into the critique hour, and remember that the sales are coming up, and Portrait Studio sales will run between end of October, way into December, and be sure to let your friends know. So to recap on where we left off last time, when I was critiquing these, for our last critique hour, we were talking about a number of things, a number of changes that need to be made in order for the elemental to feel like an element, in order to feel like a luminescent elemental in its chosen category. So we have, I'm just going to be browsing through the ones I did look at. A lot of these I haven't looked at. Some of these I did. So one of the biggest things about an elemental is, remember when I lowered the ankles and made the feet feel like they're suspended, that the fact that they're glowing. Not all elementals have to be floating, some of them can be grounded, but for those who chose themes that are gaseous, or themes that are iridescent, or lightweight, like element, for instance, a what's that thing called that glows like a pollen elemental or something like that, or a some kind of leaf elemental that is weightless and moves with the wind of some kind. You can't really ground a character like that and expect me to believe that it's weightless. So this was a perfume elemental. And I like that you chose that body type. It really does feel like the curvature of the female, and so that really, the silhouette of the the smoke or the perfume is similar. It's very curvy and big, just like her body, and I love that. I love feeling that in the character design. So we want to stick to that kind of representation. Silhouette is something that I tell you guys to do all the time, and I'm not sure I've explained myself well. Outlining the outer shape of the object, you want to have the object's outermost outline, the outer parameters that represent the space the object occupies, to also reflect the nature of the object, the narrative of the object, the behavior, the gesture. You want to capture as much as you can just on this level, and you want to speak all the language you want to speak. This nacho head, whatever the hell this turned into. And that's when you can really assess whether or not your negative space is believable. And so you see how much character design you can pull off just on the outline of the object. And again, that's something that a lot of you missed out on in your elementals. You want to do as much as possible, just like we saw in Portrait Studio. We're basically making the object glow, and a lot of you don't have that element. Even this character here, if I were to continue critiquing her, the glow element isn't really there. It's not just about figuring out how to make elements happen. It's also about the glow, the iridescence, that inner glow moving outward. That would have been really cool. So sometimes to get the best glowing effect with Photoshop tools is to kind of overdo dodge a little bit, but follow it up with a burn tool on either midtones or shadows, and you'll get that kind of super glow with the surrounding drop in the values, and get that extra little bit of contrast. I actually want to do shadows instead. So that's obviously the far end of the slider, the far end of the extreme end. And sometimes what I do is I capture the entire layer, go back to before I did the adjustments, paste that layer on top, and see how much of it I want to keep. So I still have my old layer, but I have my my added glow, so I don't lose all the detail in the form. So Control A, Control C, step back to before you did your adjustments, so you still have your old layer before you did your dodge tool movements and burn tool, and then you can lay it on top and mess around with the controls. So I put it on lighten, so again I still have the detail I want, but I have some of the, also put it on color dodge, and then adjust some of it and still keep most of that detail that we lose. Another thing that you can do is get soft brush and adjust the surrounding area with a bit more black, just so that we have that movement into the distance. And then we get, by using soft brush, we're creating the texture of the light as it emanates. And remember how you had different levels of emanation. So we can get a color mode, get another color of glow, and then just throw it on the edges. Or a new layer with no mode on it, and then just throw that outline around to that green and red kind of just moving together to represent almost like Disney colors from back when I think the Fantasia colors for all those flowers. We're getting that kind of floral layering. I really think you went about this the wrong way. I feel like, again, the person who did this started off with a figure drawing and then tried to adjust it for the challenge. You want to do, or maybe you honestly did start off for the challenge, but it doesn't feel like you chose the best effect or the best kind of texture layout for what perfume might be. It does look very feathery and glowing, but I would say it feels more dusty than perfume, so it kind of feels like some kind of sparkle, or perfume I would say is multi-layered. I would kind of bring in a kaleidoscope effect for perfume or something like that. I like this extra effect you have of the these shoulder pads. And I'm just going to bring in a little bit more of that gold in there. We have that new addition of texture, and I would lay that texture everywhere else. This crotch area, she's glowing or floating, she really doesn't need one. And then the face, you could have done much more with it. It's mostly the face that makes me feel like there's a lot more you could have done with this. For instance, because she's a very mid-tone glow because of the dust of the perfume, or that the ghostly smoke of the perfume, you want to show some of her face since it's not completely drowned out in the contrast of the iridescence or that glow. Okay, so that, I feel like we're moving in the right direction here. You can also put a secondary glow color on the inner heart of the glow, so you have this extra blue surrounding the inner center. Just like that, and that'll help bring in a new variety of color. I'm just using a really simple glow here. But the shape, the movement, her lack of eyes because the eyes are closed, so we're not really reading a lot. Just a little bit more research on where exactly you're going with all the elements. And I would recommend definitely a silhouette move. There are other movements she can do that make it feel like dust or smoke, but we do tend to do this gesture when we smell good. When we step out of the shower and we just feel great, so I kind of get what she's doing. All right. So I'm just going to load them all in and just talk about the ones I didn't look at last time, and then I update again on the ones we looked at last time as well. Okay, so this one is really, really cool. And then back to that legs thing. So this one is a grounded little sprite. It's a little spirit. But how she's standing looks like she just finished her breakdance routine and she's just telling the other side, like, what? Like, what? That's what I feel like she's doing. And I don't want that in a character design. I don't want to... She's very hip-hop, you know? I don't know if you guys would get it. She's very hip-hop. So what I would do is bring the legs in together a little bit. Have her behave a little bit more like a lady. And that's just to do, not to give her like a weightlessness, but just to make it feel like she was just running across over a log or something, or a stump, and she got caught. And she's just looking just around her. So I'm kind of thinking of it as a big frame of movement, and I've talked to you guys before about using videos and animation to help you choose gestures or study gestures, because observing the action and movement, or the action and action, will help you kind of get a better idea of what exactly is going on with the muscles, with the gesture. So this new leg, what I want it to do is just sit up higher this way, and then make it feel like she's just on a stump. She's just stepped on it real quick. She's about to jump over when the scientist caught her and took a picture of her real quick. And then we've got this leg here that I would face outward the other way. So I'd face this foot the other way. Again, she had that open legs. The ankles are moving in different directions. She really looked like she was about to You were about to get served. God, cringe. Alright. And you can also like let that leg sit out further. Like she just got on that log really quickly. She just jumped on it like a wisp. And we've kind of closed that hip space that, again, just feels a little bit off. You can keep the hip space as long as it moves back. Now she's got a booty, which I don't think is really helping the character design all that much, unless she's a booty elemental. Okay, so a little bit more action, more believable gesture compared to where we were before, which is kind of just like, yo, bring it. And then after, she just got caught, you know, jumping over the log. Just a simple gesture that helps us, you know, and I like that she's got long legs because it's adding to her power, which is running quickly across the surface of the floor of the forest. And I forget what this was, though. I forget what element it was. I'm such a bad teacher because the writing isn't there. Maybe I cropped it out. I think I cropped it out from the submission. I'm just using smudge tool. And that's something else I really wanted to talk about in the previous one, the perfume elemental, is smudge tool. You guys really need to use that to help you. You can't always use soft brush to create smudge, because then it's just a bit too soft when you're trying to create a soft but textured glow like dust or perfume or something wispy. You need that glow plus the texture of the feathered smudge brush. My brush works really great for that. Okay, so yeah, it looks like she runs really quickly. It looks like she kind of has that athletic silhouette jumping across the forest floor, which is really great. You do have bloom, which is wonderful. I love the bloom here. I'm going to make her glow a little bit more, and then I'm also going to hide her face. If the face isn't always important to see, just look at what happens when we kind of blacken out her face. It's all about that inner energy that she has, instead of the glowing face, glowing body, glowing legs. You know, it kind of gets a little bit too, it kind of suffocates you. And I'm just going to use soft brush to delete at the eyes just a little bit. Okay, so we have that extra bit of mystery on her. And then I'm going to throw some of that black of the night all the way around. And then this glow effect right here should be throwing some of its glow on nearby objects. So this pink should sit right over here as well. And then I'm going to give it a bit of it seems like a really important point in her anatomy, that little glow at the top. I mean, it's not the most important, but it's definitely there. I don't want to show too much of the floor around her and her feet on them. But we do have little moments here of glow that kind of work like little stars at night that show where the tip of her feet are, like an elf has them. And then just like Nathan did with his, can't find it because they're all oddly named. This one, beautiful little recession of light wherever the character jumped. I feel like it would be perfect on her character to have little like moments with her last step or her last stride just behind her. This is too close to the edge. Just wherever she stepped, little pieces of grass glowing. Just like that, wherever she stepped last. I want to talk to you guys about string, vines, hair, anything in a painting where you've got string, cobweb, spider. I mean, a student of mine sent me a picture the other day of a spider character who has captured a bunch of people. I want to show it to you, but I think he'd kill me if I did. Just there's a lot of string in the painting. String is evil. You might as well throw a big white streak across the painting and destroy your contrast. It's not helping the painting at all to have a bunch of vines or string hanging around, because and only because they are lines. And in the world of painting, lines are the cancer. And we want to make sure that we're not threatening anything here that is trying its hardest not to be a line but be an edge. You can have the indication and the presence of nearby wisps, but were they really that important that they needed to be this strong? I'm sure you got this comment before that your painting looks busy. That it's busy because you've got this like 80s leg warmers here with the little pieces wisping out, and then you've got the lines of her fingers, and then you've got the lines on her crown. It's way too much, and it's mostly because the lines that ate it up before. So now it looks a lot more believable, a lot more in the darkness, and then you just have those moments of glow that are catching the lines. And I'm not changing her anatomy, I'm not getting rid of the lines, but at the same time, I'm not letting them be more visible than they would be in their environment, which is a really black scene, and I'm also not going to let them destroy the composition and the character design as well. If this was a character that I have to animate, I'm gonna bring the opacity all the way down to be as little as possible so we can still see those vines. And if it's an animated 3D model, I'm gonna have like 2 vines around. I'm not gonna have 17 of them hanging around destroying the character's silhouette. Something that you missed here, which is super simple, but because you guys skip a lot of your form studies, you just don't see it as something that you should do, is the shadow of the leaves. So we're not outlining around the leaf, just the shadow of one leaf on another leaf. And it's a very particular thing to do. It's not adding shade on the interior of the leaf, but casting a shadow behind it in the shape of the leaf. So you have to know the shape you're going for, and you just have to imagine it. So see how I'm casting the shadow of the leaf. So you guys skip that. So I'm just thinking about the shape of the leaf and its shadow, right? So the first line was the silhouette of the leaf, and then the second line was the shadow, and this is another shape of the leaf, and then the shadow. And what value am I using for the shadow? Just black. And just take a look at that. It's given us some nice break in all of that excessive body in the shadow and in the crown of the leaves. And I'm going to also recede into shadow the far ends of the bush of that crown, because again, you're just doing a lot with so little space, and you're doing it with all small shapes. It's not convincing, it's distracting, and yes, it looked like leaves, but only through impressionism. It really didn't read as a valid presence of a leaf, which needs a cast shadow like any other object would. And I'm just casting some shadows here. You see that? And that's all you really needed. If you guys just looked at a leaf, just look up before they all fall down and winter comes. You guys just look around and see how the sun casts shadows on the leaves. And that's really why we're seeing the leaves, because of the shadow that brings their shape out, that they're casting. They don't just glow green in a big glow of green. Because I use lasso tool, I'm following up with my smudge brush just on small size, because I don't want any pure edges out there. Or if you don't want to use smudge brush, if it's a bit too crazy for you, just use blur tool and just blur the edges. That's really the best way to camouflage a harsh lasso edge. And that pink we talked about earlier needs to fall on the leaves as well, because that's their nearby value. Color. Just some of that pink of the nearby values here. You got spiders on her, you got all kinds of things glowing. Best thing to do is just dim those. Look how much detail you can create without the presence of excess saturation and value. So look at that. We're still serving the same purpose. We have not changed her anatomy, but we have, for the sake of the composition and the framing, decreased the size of the little things at the end of her fingers, and in doing so, we've refocused the center. Cast shadow here, cast shadow there off the stem, Wherever the light source is, it helps guide you to what to do with the objects. Right? Really just throwing those crazy vines everywhere. If she's moving a lot, she really doesn't need this excessive vine presence. You also need the shadow of the arms on top. And I'd focus all that attention back to just making her look like she glows at night. That's really the best effect. Look at how much we did with that Portrait Studio model. We really didn't have to do a lot to pull off the feeling of a complete piece. That Portrait Studio image finished 70% of the process. The rest was just referencing, getting a good costume, and that would be that. So now we focus things back to the body, and I feel like she's kind of posing on purpose. She's kind of just posing, sticking out her butt, sticking out her chest on purpose. She's got a very boyish body type. So I want to give her more of a haunch, like a, like a tomboy or a spirit, like just something that is a little bit less than human, that doesn't really pose for photos. Just give her more of that athletic moment, just that little moment where she was crouching right before the photo was taken. You gotta think like that. If you're not thinking like that, then your mind isn't in the right place. You're not thinking about it as a big scene. Try to imagine your work in an animated film. It'll really help you rethink some of your designs. It'll really help you research a lot better, and it'll take you to the right places to research. I mean, looking at actual animated movies will help you think better about how you're going to move things, what you're going to animate. Like, for instance, those sleeves, those Disco Vegas sleeves, they needed to go because those weren't going to be easy to animate. This is a rule, and you can take this to the grave, if that's even a term. You can take this to the bank. There you go. Take this to the grave. Things that are easy to animate look good, okay? And because things that are clustered are hard to animate, you got to push the animation elements as far as possible. So you have to have shapes that read sharp and clear. You have to have size variety and scale variety. You have to have as much physics as possible to help replace the lack of detail. And that's where we get detail. So if it was a character running and he was a triangular shaped nacho, we're really going to give him that nacho shape. And we're going to make his hat kind of bounce with every single step of his gait. And that's what I mean by physics detail. So detail for you guys is pretty amateur right now because you guys think detail is just all about the small sizes. That's not what I mean when I say detail. Detail is in all of the smaller elements that don't necessarily have to deal with actual physical details. So making her hunch a little bit and then bringing the whole scene down so she looks a little bit more boyish, a little bit more kind of creature-esque. So I'm going to jump here. And I'm going to just going to make her crouch, all monkey-like, to make her a little bit more wild, like feral. And then I'm going to lower her head down as well. And so that athletic motion there, and then we've got her head lowered on top. So I loved this piece. I couldn't wait to take a look at it. Just got to get around the neck so it's just sitting on top. Because she's kind of like creeping. So if we kind of raise her shoulders up a little bit, she'll look like she's creeping. Just quickly looked over her shoulder. And kind of just looking around to see who the heck just took a picture of her. What was that shutter shot just now? Who was that in the distance? Okay, and then I'm just... And she looks shocked. She looks like she's curious. Who the heck was that? So we've gotten rid of that extra booty that she had, and we've kind of just given her a real character in her gesture. So gesture, again, you guys, it isn't just about the surface description of what gesture means. It's not just about finding good hip rotation and a good spine gesture line. It's not just about that work, like making it look real. It's about a gesture that helps reflect the character's nature. So the super athletic spirit that helps things grow, that helps fungi grow, I think that's what it was, or helps things grow in the forest, doing her job late at night, and she gets caught. That's kind of how I see her. And if I were to give her a character, I'd totally give her a tomboy character. For some reason that just comes out at me, and I really want to give her that. And we just have to layer her arm back in front of her torso. I also don't like where her hand is. She's kind of still doing that come at me bro gesture, and I want to change that. So let me see what I can do there. Maybe she's well, now she looks like she's pointing. Maybe a more relaxed hand gesture at her side, like she just got caught. Okay, so that works. So that means I'm gonna have to flip horizontal. No, oopsie, flip vertical. Kind of just position her hand right there. That symmetrical, like upward thing. Maybe you were going for a tree, but was she really a tree elemental at that point? You're kind of just mixing things. I'm doing the same thing on either hand. Wasn't the best decision, because it's just too symmetrical for a character whose legs, you know, were symmetrical as well, whose crown is symmetrical as well. You weren't really giving yourself a chance to make it interesting, and you also made it too busy, and I think that's where your painting failed a lot of the ways. Okay, so she's crouching there, and I kind of want to make it feel like the glow of one section of the torso is casting a shadow on the far section, just slightly, just so we have some layering. And then there's the hand, and I just want to mess around with that a little bit more. She kind of looks like she's pointing. Maybe flip it back horizontally. Or maybe just let it hang beside her. Again, just sometimes moving the hand will help you kind of see what to do with the arm. You don't always have to move the arm first. Position the hand. That's kind of what I do with gestures. I move the hand first, or position the hand in Portrait Studio, or imagine the hand and then move the arm for that in Portrait Studio. Just thinking about where the hand is. I don't know why that's hiding that. Okay, and then the hand could be there. Alright, and then you can mess around, you can use this green space here to make it so there's some spaces in between her ribs, which are glowing, or you can do the inverse of that, like an X-ray, just to show how she's glowing. There's only one area that's glowing right now, but it still looks cool. It's a pretty cool design. It's a pretty cool character. Imagine doing like 17 more of these with different color combos, and the main scientist, main botanist just randomly stumbled into this colony, and they all have different designs, and I just imagine it's this one of the many, but kind of seems like an anime protagonist because she's got a lot going on. But before, bring it on. Alright, she's got that booty out. She's got the legs facing different directions. She's got the knees facing different directions, so she's getting a pelvic exam. You got the strings everywhere. You got no cast shadows. And the face is visible, so we have a little bit more sneak now. Sneak 100. And just throwing some things into the distance. A little bit more of an active gesture. And if you feel like it doesn't glow enough, I think it's glowing just fine, and this is a beautiful portfolio piece if you're going to be throwing this into your portfolio. Okay, so you got the bloom, you got the necessary amount of contrast, all is looking good. Okay, so Photoshop's kind of freaking out on me. All right, good. Let's move on. So we've got the element of plastic, which I don't think is the best thing you could have chosen for this design, because it's supposed to be an element. In the description I give you guys a lot of space to think about it as a naturally occurring combustion, where I don't really see plastic as a naturally occurring form of combustion in any level of its production. I mean, glass would have been cool, but that doesn't necessarily stretch. I think you were thinking of this in the wrong terms. Human-born creatures, and they retain their human memories, their lifespan is... this seems more like a power, a specific power. But I guess you can just stretch the imagination a little bit more. For this piece, I think you went for that female body type a little bit too much. It does read as plastic in some areas, but it's really just reading as glowing glass, glass when it's being shaped. So I would correct that a little bit more, or make it actually twist around like hot glass. But plastic I wouldn't think is the best idea for this challenge. This kind of almost feels like it's rubber, those little arm bits that kind of bend, which I wouldn't say is plastic. And then you've got the stretch. I mean, I guess we do have plastic gloves, rubber gloves. Which one is the one that stretches? So I'm going to jump onto this one, but I really wish that you could revisit this and try another version, so you can work with what you have already and try to make it into like a glowing glass elemental. And you can have little chips of glass here and there. But the stretching effect that I see is kind of reading as plastic. But, again, it really doesn't read as an elemental. But you do have some glowing in there, which is cool. I think the person who worked on this, I might have to retrieve it, worked on this a little bit more in the time off. And I think they did exactly what they were supposed to, which is bring in more charred pieces around. I'm not sure if I looked at this. I think I looked at it just really quickly last time. More charred pieces and more coal-like patterns of the glow all around the legs. And this is a really cool elemental design. The expression is so solemn and mournful, because forest fires and devastation and all of that. One thing I hope that you did in your latest piece, your latest edits, is throw in a little bit more glow behind the mask. That's the main event. That's what's happening. A little bit more loose fires here and there. Some fiery, wispy pieces like a dying fire. Has those last little bits of flame just licking through. This one is really cool. But I think you overdid, so this one I think I'm actually going to be painting over. I think you overdid the glow. It's kind of blinding. One thing that you want to always do is have less glow in order to have more glow. That means that you have less glow everywhere else, so that any glow you do have reads as more. Not by the usual definition of more, but by comparison. Where you do have it is where it counts. So here we have this beautiful glow still. You can erase away at the edges so you still have some edge glow if you want that. Not too much, because it'll look like an outline. But as for it glowing everywhere, it's a little too much. You also have this veil that is just beautiful opportunity in this. Again, another opportunity to mess around with your thumbnails. Beautiful opportunity here to make that veil move in all kinds of ways. Overly symmetrical whiskers, you could have made them move in different ways as well, and this is all stuff you could have done at the silhouette stage. So again, silhouettes, Istebrak, how do we do them? Well, we're going to grab a value. You're going to you're going to do your main shape, so it's going to be the lady standing there with the crown that is triangular. You're going to have some wisps maybe moving this way, one wisp moving down, and then one wisp at the top. So you have this really nice asymmetry, and how you distribute these wisps should balance either end of the symmetry line. So you create a line. Make sure that if she was trying to balance, that she would be able to balance based off how you distribute shapes on either side. So you're not going to put all the wisps on one side, are you? Because that's bad design. Not the best time to take the photo. Think of it as the best time to take the photograph. Too symmetrical, which is boring design. It feels more like a stained glass, biblical kind of design of a saint, really, than a character design in action. And then you've got the veil, which is such an amazing opportunity to mess around with layered fabric. You got one section of fabric on top of another, and this is where all your work should have gone. All the work of this design should have been in the layering of the veil. You can still have symmetry, but have a general asymmetry to the way the wrinkles are moving across the veil. Okay, and then I recommend a way more kind of like upward crown like ear, like motion to the crown, the headpiece here. And then the more you do this, the more layers you bring in, and some more wisps at the bottom, kind of to create a ground space underneath. You can actually make it look like a jellyfish if that's what you were going for. Okay, so I mean, I can try to do it really quickly, and the main way to do it is just to I mean, if I could just really illustrate how we could pull it off, is to layer by layer decrease the sizes as you bring in more wrinkles. It's just, this is just how I'm displaying it to you. This is not how I would recommend you go about it. But do you see what's happening is this multi-layer? And the layers that you get are going to be layers of the fabric on itself. So sometimes you'll get a piece of fabric on the inside, and then this whole section here, wherever the fabric is sitting on top, is going to get the extra layer of light, or the extra layer of color. So you get this whole section here colored, and then you get the interior, which is this value right here, and then you get the interior color as well. So you get the secondary value, you get the interior, and then you get that value, and then you get that layering. And this would be that extra layer. So you just keep repeating this pattern over and over, and then you get that really, really cool jellyfish effect. Plus the color, plus the glow, minimizing excessive contrast, and you have a more believable shape. I like how she feels like she's sinking into the deep. So you have that kind of darkness towards the bottom, which is something that a lot of the deep sea elemental designs could have needed, could have used, is just more of that deep sea darkness and that barely visible. Here, let me flatten it. See what I can pull off with effects, because critique is very different from actual painting. There's only so much I can do. So I'm trying to see what I can, how I can move in this scene. Okay, and decrease some of that. And just like we did in our reference that we built together, we don't have to have all the detail visible. When it's a glowing object, we lose detail. I'm just going to do that manually, dropping the values. You can just feel, you can almost feel the space around the character when we do it like this. And this is about taking away, we're taking away from the design. And then there's the fact that all that energy being emitted, that light, that warmth being given outward, is going to distort some edges. And I'm going to just go back and replace that with some more. And then this pink value that you have here, you could have really used it in all these gray tones. Kind of layered multiple layers of color. Here. around the crown at the top. And then just imagine this color combo with those wispy asymmetrical motion in that veil. And then there's her body, which seems opaque, so you could have revealed her silhouette by throwing some shadow over the scene. You could have revealed some of her body through. And then for female, it's all about the neckline and the waistline. That's really what makes things attractive. You could be any size as long as you have an unobstructed neckline and a defined waistline. That's all you really need. So take that as advice, girls. When you dress up, make sure you're not hiding too much of your waistline and too much of your neckline all the time, especially if you want to look girly. When it comes down to a science of it, it's the neckline and the waistline. You can have big old chunky calves. It makes you look even better. You can have cankles like me. I don't have cankles. Sometimes they're swelling. I'm getting old. You can have crazy hair at the top, but the classic look that has always worked is any defined clothing that allows the neckline to, from jackets to dresses, whatever. So that is a little bit of fashion info, and that you can bring when it comes to female characters. You can have an athletic upper body as long as you still have that neckline waistline ratio. Doesn't matter at any combination. That's how fulfilling that combo is. So I just want to show you where you were before. Zero atmosphere, really, really super flat. And we want to promote atmosphere. So just imagine this. Just imagine in your mind's eye more wisps, asymmetrical wisps, more layering, an open jellyfish effect. And this is because you skip that layer of that level of phase of studying the form, the silhouette, the shape language, the scale, all of that stuff. I'm getting rid of this stuff in the back because something is happening to my imagination. I'm seeing this as the base of an ocean floor or a swampy environment. It's kind of like capsized ship or something, or different victims, and they're all just sitting there, all sad. Right? And she's captured them all. And I'm just going to throw in a cast shadow coming off of her onto the smoke, which is going to help make it look a bit more realistic. Just her legs on the smoke, just wherever she's sitting. And then I'm going to close off the edges of the canvas with some shadow. Not that way, just a little bit more classy. And then we're going to try to cast a shadow. So there's no light at the top, right? There's no light coming from the top. All the light is coming from the bottom here. And I feel like it's way too much where it shouldn't be. So I want to silhouette this part of her face because it's in front of the far side of her mushroom head. I'm going to select that, go backward, and edge out this really, really super important stacking edge. So yeah, today's class is going to be long, and that's okay because I have nothing else lined up. And then I'm going to, I really wanted to get to these before Critique Hour starts, because once Critique Hour starts, I will not be able to get to these. I'm also going to, you see the center, this shadow that's forming around the center bark? That center, like, what is it, the trunk? Yeah, trunk. I want that to be where all the shadow is focused. Okay, so Photoshop kind of shat itself again. All right, and then I'm using darken. I'm just carrying that cast shadow. This is what happens when lights come from either side at equal size. You get a shadow going down the middle. And I don't know why you didn't have this shadow. Because if you had built a reference, even on Portrait Studio, if you had built your reference, you would have had this very, very important core shadow, which is basically the resulting shadow from two sides. And then again, I'm just going to delete wherever there is relief. So any upward facing surfaces that cancel out this central trunk of shadow. So we got this at the top. And you really got to give us something to work with. You can't make every area where there's a shadow something glow. Torso and diaphragm shadow is glowing. Lower breast area shadow, glowing. You could have done a lot more for the character design if you had just thrown the breasts in some shadow and just kept them responding to the top. And then given them their cast shadow. That way you have a cast shadow present. It's not all glow all the time. In this area right here, it's one of those surfaces that looks up and catches some relief from that central trunk of shadow. And now we have a completed torso and reed to the feminine shape. I think there's a spider crawling down my neck. Okay. And these are we're just blocking in at this point. So she's got to lure them in somehow, and if this is a mermaid character, I would definitely keep the, shit, that's my phone. I would definitely keep the silhouette intact. Please ignore that. So inappropriate, I'm so sorry. Now you guys know what my default phone Samsung ringtone is. Alright, so I'll keep that shadow going in that diaphragm area, and then I'll let some of the stomach light shine upward. I'll let the upper stomach area catch some light and create the belly button space in there. And I'm just, every time I do a brush stroke, I'm looking over at my navigator to see how it reads. And then from a distance, I'll start adjusting intensity, because I don't want it to read with that same contrast as the upward facing pieces. And then we've got these beautifully, beautifully layered sections here, and I again feel like you overdid the glow and they're not really doing what they should be. So they should be a little bit darker where they start off so that we have that glow, and the glow shouldn't be equal all the way around, because what it should be doing, so this shouldn't be the same all the way through, it should be glowing most on the inside of the sleeve. Alright, so that it feels like we're getting that glow from like the central system inside the character's anatomy. And then again, same thing with this lower sleeve. There's really not much making it glow, so it would do better as a silhouette. And this all comes from doing fabric studies, form studies. For my private students, if you're ever curious about how I run my private sessions, I assign fabric studies as a staple, because they set you up for some of the most complicated form studies you'll ever do is a fabric study, because it's multifaceted. You've got layers, you've got edge control, and then you've also got radial shading, and then translucency. And all of that works all at the same time to really challenge you and your ability to break down a piece as problem solving. That's what painting is. It's problem solving. And the more problems you solve, the easier it will be for you to solve them in future situations. And those future situations that you do them in, you will be doing those with as if it's the first time ever dealing with that combination of forms. You won't be doing it with a finesse. You'll do it with the guesswork of a first-time form study. So imagine getting rid of the label and just focusing on the object. So it's not going to be character glowing in a deep sea elemental. It's just going to be fabric study, and that's going to be a lot easier to do, a lot easier to pursue for the mind of a student which just wants to do you know, masterpieces all day. They're always trying to sabotage the success of a study with a subject, and as a teacher, you're always trying to make them not do that as much as possible, which is a lot harder than it sounds. And then keep people interested. Alright, so we're layering it from top down, and I'm mostly taking away a lot of what you did, and now I'm just going to blend along the anatomy. moving down. And one thing I want to do is either lighten the space around so all that mist is catching around. So I will throw that mist everywhere. And just like you did here, I'm surrounding the area with a mist and I'm darkening the body. Just like you did with the arm. You did the arm so well. And I'll darken the body. So we're going back to that main trunk of shadow that we had before. Which might not read right away, but it'll definitely help the scene. And we can keep all those glows that you need right where they belong. So now it's all about this system up here, and I don't miss the amount of light you had before. And she's still technically glowing because we have this beautiful setup right here. If you were going for that subsurface on the crown, you do that in the core shadow of the crown going upward. So you're canceling out a lot of the core shadow at the top, if that's something that you want. And then for the rest of the body, so I mean, if you want to make her glow as one singular character, you can make the whole thing glow with light and then you'd be done with it. But I like how you chose one element to glow. That way it really does make a difference when she's glowing there. And I'm going to get the dodge tool and just, because we've gotten rid of so much glow towards the body, we are capable of throwing back so much up towards the top. And just like before, darkening the face really does a lot for that added mystery as well as danger. That extra bit of danger is really, really cool too. The cheekbone could have been moved a little bit higher. She is a humanoid, and one of the first things in portraiture to achieve a humanoid portrait is to mess around with the cheekbones, which is what a lot of effect artists do in Hollywood. They just go straight for the cheekbones, brow bones, instant humanoid. Humanoid in a can. Let's just touch those parts, mess them up a little bit, and then you got that read. Okay, so just adjusting that on the other side might help as well. So we have the before where it really wasn't feeling like you had enough shadow to entertain the feeling like it was deep sea. I'd get rid of those trees. A really cool job on the negative space of the trees, and then any light that you do have is the sky behind. It feels cool, but it feels like she doesn't really live in this area, because then it would be green everywhere. It would be such a thick area in order for all this to, exist, that we wouldn't really be able to see sky, and the thickets are so high, like a mile high or something like that, and it's like a deep, dark forest that's just messed up. If you do see sky, it's through a thick layer of green fog or something poisonous, but when we work like this, we're making it feel like it's deep sea. And if this is a forest, it's deep forest. Alright, and it's all about these beautiful cast shadows moving down because this direct light is working like a spotlight around the character. Okay, so I'm starting to feel fatigue knocking on my door, so I have to get through these. So this is a rock elemental-ish, like a gem, and you're allowed to keep them, grounded. What I only read gem here. This feels like a floating liquid, and then we've got this dusty thing coming out of this is not what I would hire an artist to do if I was a game developer and I had a rock character that was playable, or a rock effect, or a rockish weapon that was like a precious element or a gem or something like that. I'd make them like throw little daggers of glowing rock or something like that, or a little like the only sound effect that comes, it's like sharp little shards of of rock, just like we see here coming out of the arm, or the arm is one big like Terminator antagonist dude with the arm. That's how he would fight. I would. That's what I would do as the elemental power. So what we're seeing here is this dusty effect. So is she like a dusty rock elemental? We're doing less. We're doing more with less when we do something like this, because it's not going to be about the head. I know you're trying to like probably bring in more elements with that hand design there, but I think we're doing a lot more with that. And then you can adjust the edge of this lasso here to be shaped for the rocks that you know you're trying to emulate up here. And then here, to add to that feminine outline, is where I'd bring in more of that rock shape. Just like that. So while she's walking, she has that kind of femininity as well. And then I'm not sure what's happening with her torso, but you can make that feel a little bit more elemental as well, a little bit less. Well, now it's looking like an android. And you can get that really athletic silhouette going. And again, it's like an exaggerated body type, and it's all about the element. And then you've got all this negative important space here, and none of it is like being represented properly for the element. So you've got no texture here, and all you really have to do is get the shape out and then just start giving us the top of the little gem growth. And you just got to keep doing that over and over again. Give us the shape, and then give us the top of the gem, catching some nearby bounce light. And I would just make that the texture moving through. You've got this like clothing texture happening here, which is thrown off the whole piece. So I really think that, remember that iridescence we discovered on Portrait Studio? So I think that some of this everywhere would have been really, really cool. Just even if it's just the pattern. So I used screen to get rid of the black. Even if it's just like a surface break, like a shattering of the surface, would have been really cool. And then after all that is done, what we can do is darken the piece. And we're just darkening with the lightness layer on Control U and the hue saturation slider on purpose, because we want any other iridescence that we're bringing in to come from Dodge tool. Be careful with Dodge tool, please. It's not a cop-out. It doesn't render for you. I mean, look at this. It's horrible. It's a horrible tool. It never does what I exactly want it to do, and I always have to go back and clean up its crap. And I would probably get more of this, some of that, some of this, Control C, Control V, and then put it on screen to get rid of the black. And then just see where else I might have needed some of that texture. And then just keep this pattern repeating. Oops. Deselect. I could use the clone tool, but I don't have it saved. We're just throwing that like everywhere where there is an edge of something. And you could have just repeated this texture everywhere. I mean, you did it before, and unless you're lazy, you can do it again. So just the top of her leg, and then I'm cleaning the edges. Actually, I'll do it with my blocking brush, because then it'll feel blocky. Alright, we're just repeating this texture over and over and over again until it feels like this is what the character is made of. Okay? So it's not about having the element attached like it's a costume or something. This is what the character is made of. That's what an elemental is technically. To be nerds about it, this is what an elemental is. So just look at what's happening to the silhouette when you do this. Really, really feels like an elemental now. And you still have that really beautiful body shape. I'm just reflattening the image, and I'm just trying to like chip out wherever I don't have gem, just to give it that extra touch that she's made of this, but she's decided to take this shape, or her master who made her chose this shape for her. Okay, and then I want to use this same pattern to create some negative space as well, because there's just too much visible the lower we go in the canvas. It's not about me also making her suspended, because I like that she's she's made of rock, so it makes sense. But I also don't want to throw the canvas dragging all the way to the edge of the canvas for no reason. Throw the character to the edge of the canvas dragging all the way down for no reason. And of course we want to show a nice pointed end to her foot. She doesn't need a human foot. She's not a human. She's made of something in the shape of a human, or has taken the shape of a human. So a lot of these were almost there. You guys almost had it, and it's just because of some misguided representation of character design. You guys are like foaming at the mouth, desperate to paint a face, to paint hands, to paint feet. When we're talking about an elemental, you guys really think the only way to pull this all off is to have these repeated typical character elements, and that's really not what you need. You guys don't have to be desperately in need of the typical beauty standards or the typical things that dress a character design in order to pull off a believable character. We still have this empty space here and here, and that's working for the character. I would actually have just a bit more texture here. Just somewhere growing along the side of the leg. Let's see what screen does for us. Oh, son of a bitch. All right. And then darken. I'll just drop the levels significantly. There we go. Or maybe just have that be the pointed end. Nah, never mind. I do wish that we had some more negative space here, so I'll probably just get the burn tool on shadows, go down to the base layer, and just burn around this area just so we have less excessive glow. And then we got that fun stuff, which is the thing that we did in Portrait Studio with the extra bloom, that extra color of glow, so that yellow versus red. That could have been what we do here. Because this is a mandatory aspect of the painting. So we could have gotten soft light and get that purple, because I feel like this character's craving some purple. And we could use that just everywhere around the edges to introduce the color. And you know what? I'll actually start changing the color too. And then in a new layer, on way less opacity, we start bringing in the glow. Just trying to find the best way to bring it in without destroying the detail. Now I would do this, if I had layer access, I would do this behind the character. So I'd put the glow behind the character. And then make sure it's like low enough, just like decreasing the bloom. And then make that glow everywhere. And then there's also the largest glow, which is done zoomed out. And this is mandatory for this assignment because that's what we were doing with Portrait Studios. We were trying to get that to read. You don't have to have the glow sit on top of everything, but it definitely helps create the feeling that you can get rid of it on the inside of the character as long as it's sitting on the outside of the character. And remember, less is more. The more you flatten the character, the more you darken the scene, the more the character works in their environment. Okay? And you can, if you want to, bring down those midtones and focus the, like for instance, actually it's Control L. You can bring those midtones down if you don't like that much glow. It won't bring down any of the white, as you can see. That's how levels works. Or you can bring down the whites if they are too much, which is on the other side, I believe. No, it doesn't touch the white. Actually, you can use, my bad, you can use burn on highlights if you want to just bring them down so that you could be a little bit more picky with them. Okay, and I love the little pieces wisping out now. I would, if I were picky, I'd make the heart glow a little bit higher. As you can see, it's a repeated theme. We are doing the internal glow outward to reinforce the presence of the subsurface, which was a category, a requirement. So before, kind of reading like she's got growths, less like the element herself. After, oopsie, forgot to disable those. So before, after. Now it feels like she's made of it. Okay, let's move on. So we looked at this. Same exact deal with this one. Same exact deal. Almost the exact same elemental. And I would just want more of that repeated pattern. The lava is really cool. I love that ice lava layering, that combo. But I'm just not reading any more information in the negative space. You guys can use texture overlays as long as you're doing some of the work. For instance, I use the artist's own drawing to layer that texture over and over. That's what pros do. Nobody has time to draw every single little part. This is just part of the creation process. We're doing this with efficiency, but at the same time we're maintaining quality. So the thing we're copy-pasting isn't stolen, the thing we're copy-pasting isn't cheap, the thing we're copy-pasting, we painted ourselves and pushed it to the farthest, and then copy-pasted that so we know the original was really, really well done. It's not a decrease in quality to copy-paste for the illusion of texture. Who the heck has time to paint every single micro detail? This piece, really, really similar to the others, is that you have the same glow on all the different layers. Just look at what happens when we throw back the distance a little bit more and oopsie. So what I'm going to do is erase 100%. Oh crap, yeah, that's not going to work. So I will copy, paste, and then, all right. So I'm going to delete with 100% the first layer of the crown. Delete with 50% the second layer of the crown. I'll try to capture it a little bit better. Oops, not double stroke, because that was not the point. The point was a little bit, because it's 37. And then delete with like a fraction of that last piece, like maybe 15%, the last layer. So we have this layering. Instead of all the way glow, we have layers to the crown. And then the crown is glowing with this orange that is seen nowhere else in the scene. Like it's an orange glow and nothing else seems to be taking that color, and that makes no sense. This is by all means, a red elemental. you have the largest part reading as red. If you want a clash between red and blue, go for it. But just have a more believable transition in between the two. That way, nearby objects that are smaller than the light source take the shape of the light source, and that would be that. And again, you can have another external glow. You can have a pink glow color around, it's always so cool, around the red, if you want to go about it that way. That way you have this extra little buffer color between the warm and the cool of the blue. And that's just sitting on the outsides. And then zoom all the way out, and that would be the glow color you add. And then you go to that blue, and that would be the glow color in there. Okay, and then you can delete on the inside if you feel like you've lost detail. I honestly just give her super, super bright eyes. A little bit of detail on the nosular area. And then getting rid of those, they're kind of distracting. Just leave them as what they are. Just using my smudge brush. I want to cast some shadows off the head. The head is being cast, its shape down over the rest of the neck and the torso and the chest, because it's casting the head is casting a shadow. The crown is casting the shadow of the head. That'll help. And then we have the same thing going down. The torso is casting a shadow on the thighs. The thighs are casting a shadow on the knees. And that's how you create these different levels and create the space behind them. But you have the same repeated shape over and over and over again for this like coral creature, which isn't a good idea. Oh yeah, torso is casting a shadow on the arm. Arm feels super, super flat. So I need to get rid of that. So yeah, I would recommend more variety in this, because this is a really boring shape. Basically, you did this, and you did this. That's it. It looks cheap. The way you could have affected it is that maybe you had breaks in the triangular shape, you know, so you had like little pieces here, smaller pieces there, and that would have been a much cooler shape to do. It's the same shape technically. Sorry about that stupid ass system sounds. It's the same shape technically, but we have breaks in the sections, and then each different section that layers behind could have different kinds of breaks. Okay, so that's a lot more interesting. Animating it would be so cool, but you can't animate every single one of these pieces. You can still make them take the shape of coral or polyp or whatever she is. She looks like she lives in your gut bacteria or something, with your gut bacteria or something, with all these little polyps coming out. So you want to break that up. If she's a deep sea creature, which she looks like, because of the lack of the nose and the jellyfish wisps at the end. You want to look at actual deep sea plants of some kind, and then work from there. But the glow element, I would say, is missing for the most part. I would kind of go for it so that you fulfill the requirement. And then just the ends here. I'm sorry if I don't get to look at everyone's piece. I hope this is nearly all of them. But I'm so sorry. I'm just one man. And doing the best that I can. A little piece of like dust kind of at the top kind of looks cute, right? But I don't know, might be too much. And then if you don't want to redo everything, I recommend blend with a smudge brush every other layer. If you're curious about this brush, it's just on my store if you guys want to grab it. It's part of the smudging set. So every other piece I'm smudging out. It's like an eraser if you keep it strong on 43%, but if you want to have a mild blend, obviously bring the strength down and press lightly with your pens. Every other section. Detail relief is the most, I guess, classy way of bringing in texture without overdoing it. Okay, and then these little sections, I feel like they are really important, like they're part of the anatomy, and you've kind of like drowned them out with the shapes behind. So just bringing in some shadow at the root, like that, might help give them some definition. And you might want to do that everywhere. And it would be so friggin' cool if you could have each of these little pieces cast a shadow. Oh, that would be so friggin' awesome. It would just look super cool. And the shadow could be like the negative space color, so it could be pink, like a darker pink, obviously. Kind of looks a little bit too dark right now. Very light area. Like that. And you can just do them for all of them. Little shadow pieces. Her torso looks kind of boring. You may want to bring in something there. But I'm going to let this one sit and see what you can do with yours. I looked at this. This piece has got a lot of shadow in it. It does not look like a root spirit. It looks like a gadget spirit or an IT spirit. Kind of looks like a bunch of wires. That's just what I get off of it, like wires or internal, like hardware, like when you strip a computer and that's all you get, and then when it glows right before it explodes. It doesn't feel like a root spirit. I wouldn't use blue on a root spirit unless it's like some kind of magical electric root, which is cool as a cool combination of the two themes, seeing how you could pull it off, because electricity and the roots kind of have the same chaotic distribution naturally. They look the same. Electricity and tree branches look the same, like lightning. The board guardian of Atlantis. He looks cool. He's made of fish. He's made of different fish elements. Kind of a little bit too much detail. Really busy. And Atlantis Elemental is really cool. I would get rid of his face because he seems like a gatekeeper or something who's super bored. His face is annoying me because it's not. I don't feel like I need his face to appreciate what he's made of and his role and his gesture. He looks bored. True, that looks cool. The whole scene is way too light. As you've learned so far, you're probably like, yeah, I think I've used way too much gray in the background. And then we're not really seeing him in his element. We're kind of seeing him perform, which isn't like perform an activity. We're not really getting what we need to explain his powers. We're not seeing him in his glamour shot. So he's bored, he's hunting. But we've got this excessive detail here. We're not really, I don't even know what he's about. What's his power? Being made of fish is not enough. What is essentially his element? What is his detail? Being from somewhere doesn't make you an elemental. This is not the elemental of Minnesota. You know, it's not going to work. He needs to be made of something. What is the element? If he was a cheese elemental, if he was like a Wisconsin cheese elemental, that would make sense. And he's from Wisconsin, so his environment is Wisconsin, but he's made of cheese. That I would get. But, you know, how do you pull off an Atlantis elemental without making an Atlantean citizen? So is he an Atlantean citizen or is he just a creature of the area? So he's made of different fish parts. I didn't read the description. Probably should have, dumbass. You have strings here. You have all the crimes committed. Strings. You don't have glow. You didn't have the necessary contrast. We darken the scene. You have clashing values that glow. So everything here should glow, and as it layers on top of each other is the result of that glow, which is green, in between these two, which is really cool. And then we've got this little fish about to die. It's really busy, you got a lot going, and if we cut a line down the middle of his character, it's just not working. It's kind of symmetrical, not doing a look at my power, showcase, glamour, stand up, like a lineup, or like a showcase. He's just doing a gesture, which is throwing us off a little bit. Don't recommend red, green, blue, because it just looks a bit too close to a rainbow, so I'd get rid of the red. I'd keep the green and the yellow, and then get blue and the yellow and get that green in between. That would be really cool. And then try to give a gesture that helps us get a cool symmetrical stand, but an asymmetrical distribution to the elements of the design. And then if you want to, have a little bit of rubble here and there from Atlantis. But as for him standing there, his face was throwing me off. I wasn't feeling it. Okay, Nova. Really, really cool design here. You have only one area, so having these here is doing all the work for you. Get rid of them. Because when we get rid of that, are we really seeing a Nova? So I like how you had this glow out. You know, this glow, and it seems like we're seeing a supernova here. But when we actually bring in the texture, and like I did before, and apply it to the area, we're not going to be able to see it because it's so white in her little crown thing. We're not going to see a dang thing. So we have to darken her crown. And this is what I mean when I say darken the area so you can get the texture to be visible. Oh, it's 9%. And I like that the shape of her hair looks like a supernova. I think that's pretty cool. This one here would be really cool. So you're using these to do all the work for you, but they're not actually in the character's design. We're not actually seeing them happen in there. So screen. Go back. I think it would be really cool to shrink this one or stretch it out and use that in there, and then just darken ever so slightly around. Merge those two. Oh shit, what happened here? Crud. Okay, and just like reshape some of this stuff to match what you're going for. The portrait is good. I don't get the skirt. Why do we need a skirt on an elemental? Don't bring in any clothing, please. And then her whole body could be made of this stuff. Like I said, you're allowed to bring in just texture exactly as you see it in your reference, just as long as you affected it in somehow, in some way you kind of adjusted it, combined multiple textures together. So just duplicated the layer, threw it in there. That's what was missing for you guys, because you didn't really have functional textures. So the elemental never read. Didn't feel like they were of that element because they weren't really made of it. And then there's that general glow. Again, that's missing. Sorry, that's my texture brush. I'm gonna just use like a purpley blue. And just put that underneath the textures. I'm just going to try to make these elements really work. And you've got her head, which is a beautiful shape, and then you've got her body, which is kind of dragging the scene down vertically. I mean, the most interesting thing is how she's got the element. It's like she's the center of the galaxy. So we really didn't need anything down here, and we just needed more of what was happening up here. Oh, shit. That's fine. And I would have stretched that entire area around her head to be even bigger. Just expand it. Just grab that, flip it, enlarge it, use it out. Ooh, that's looking good. And then throw it on screen. Actually, alright. Actually, sorry. I'm just trying to minimize the amount of work I have to do in the imprint of my work on your work. Henceforth. Alright. So just expanding that structure. I really like this effect here. So a lot of you don't feel like you want to use other people's textures. That's cool. I respect that. Kind of going to slow your work down a little bit, especially if you're being paid pennies for your time. You want to get shit done. There's all kinds of royalty-free textures you can use. As long as the main stuff was made by you, you're really not destroying anything when it comes to skill level. You're not really misrepresenting anything. Okay, so now that we have a nice distribution of texture everywhere, we want to go back to the portrait. And because these now are light sources, we can bring in that light on either side of her head. Her features are a little bit alien, but I guess that works. Radially building up the cheek and mouth. Lips combining into the sides of the nose, inside of the brow bone, forehead moving all the way up. She doesn't need bangs. She didn't go to a salon and get her hair cut. She's a goddess of elements. She doesn't get bangs. She doesn't need bangs. Okay, and then what will really make this look cool is just like before, adding that mystery, that danger. And darkening her face up. And then saturation, when you're missing iridescence, but you have to have a shadow, just saturate the shadow. See that? We just corrected all of that shadow we just added. And then I'm going to go back to Dodge Tool, if it'll behave, and just throw in some extra glow on either side, a little bit of glow on the eyes. And then if you want to keep messing around with those golds, really go for it as a value, as a color. Throw it in random spots to combine it with the rest of the palette. And I would kind of like darken the scene a little bit, and then finally bring in that large glow, zoomed out, soft brush all the way up, normal layer, normal brush mode. And if you want it as a yellow glow, you want it as yellow but with a blue edge. You want a green or a pink on the outside, go for it. Like duplicate it. And then I would actually raise that up. Mess around with that and then decrease the opacity once more. And now we get that glow. And just like we did before, we can delete where we want contrast to remain. Okay, don't like that. Just like the white, I guess. It's not working. All right then. Maybe saturation. No. Okay. Okay. So let's take a look at where it was before. I would just redo it. I would just redo the glow. I did a bad job. So before, you guys do a lot of cosplay elementals. Like they're cosplaying as the elemental. They're made of the thing. Oh, oopsie. They're made of it. I'm just gonna get rid of that. Okay, so in order for them to look like they're made of it, you have to make them use that texture, that reed. I like the wispy ends. I kind of lost that. You can go back and make them re-wispy. So that little wispy tail, you can get rid of that or have some of those pieces kind of work back. You can make the entire cosmos sit around her face like it's a crown that sits around her face. Right, so it sits around just like that, and her face is right in the middle. And you have these really, really cool patterns kind of just chilling somewhere here. And that way, if she's actually made of the supernova, we can actually have a trace of the supernova, maybe some tails here, the outermost edges of it, where the blast happened. And you can use these discs here to reiterate that. Not that I use the word reiterate properly, but yeah. Okay. Ooh, lots of pieces. I think that's it. This one looks great. I think I did adjust this one. I darkened it a little bit last time. So I looked at this. No. Oh no, we're not. I think, yeah, I did look at this dude. I looked at her. I did not look at him. Oopsie. I did not look at her. I might just do another day for these. These are all suffering from the same thing, which is not enough glow. I mean, it's way too dim. Way too dim. There's just, I wish there was like a control slider for glow. Is there? Am I confused? Is there? Just exactly how much glow I need, and that just brings in bloom. There has to be like a, okay, let's see if we can find it. Normal. No, it's not this. Inner glow. This is just for like layer effects. It's not for what I need. I want it to just like emanate without me having to do it. There's also blur. I think it's a filter of some kind that I'm not aware of. I've never really had to do this. And then Control C, step backward. And then just, this is a horrible way to do it. And then just step back. This is just horrible. Lighten. I guess, yeah, this worked. I guess. Duplicate the layer to Kingdom Come. Merge down. Duplicate. So now we got that glow-ish. Raise that. Oops, no, wrong layer. All the way up. It's kind of helped bring in some of that glow effect-ish. Really, really weird way of accomplishing it. Went to Gaussian blur. So before, after, and then the red of that skirt really doesn't fit with the environment. you need a more blue tint to the bark. You can't have like typical color bark, typical color glow butterfly, and then typical red, and none of them are speaking to each other, and the fact that the only light source in the area is the red. This one, too many colors not speaking to each other as well. I think a quick pass of sponge tool on saturate will really help raise the saturation levels to match the saturation you have here, because you've got a lot here, and then there's just the layer balance. So color balance, I think I would, is it here? Is it this one? No. It's some of these levels. No, it's curves. So I'd get the red and I'd bring the red down a little bit more, just because you got a bit too much warmth in there. I would just get rid of more of the warmth. Okay, and then that saturation was kind of all you needed. Let me crop this out. Kind of distracting. And then I would just drop the levels. So we have that glow. That's really all that you needed for this elemental design, you guys. Just more of that outward glow and less of that matte feeling. And you just had that pink there, but you had no saturation in anywhere else in the scene. And it doesn't have to be this bright all the way down. You can darken around it, and really, technically, this should be what's allowing these objects to be visible. The nearby knee, the side of the leg, everything else should get dark value. This little internal kind of like area needs to be colored with yellow, if that's the nearby color value. Color. Oopsie. And everything here should have its glow. So these are glowing, and that's cool. I think you should cast some shadows on these little curtains. Okay, looks a lot more magical now. The face is such a cool element. I feel like these little pieces here don't really help it, because when we get rid of them, we no longer have something to look at that is a completely different color. We just have this super consistent character design. We have moments of pink on the inside, but now look at what the head is doing. It feels really, really cool. And then just imagine if we got some eyes and put them everywhere. So it feels like little faces, but they're not faces, it's just the plant life. Darken. I feel like put that same face everywhere, or little pieces of eyes. That might work out. I actually don't like it, so I'm gonna keep it like this. Okay, and then that's it. I would work on these. I would work on not letting them be pure bright all the way down, but I don't hate them. I think it looks like a really, really cool character design. Before, yeah, that pink was just in the way. She doesn't need those testicles. All right. So flatten image. I think that's it, unless there's something else that comes up that I haven't looked at. I think I looked at all of these. I don't know if I looked at this dude. I think I did. I think I gave a general quick look to all of them. Thank you everyone for submitting for this challenge. This has been one of the most fun challenges we've ever done, because it's been a new variety of color. It's been a color challenge. It hasn't necessarily been pure character design, because we don't have to worry about faces and costume and all that. We're worrying about creature-esque designs, humanoid silhouettes, texture variety, color variety. It's so fucking beautiful. I loved every single piece because it was just a feast for the eyes. a lot more fun than the usual stuff I was doing, and I really was trying to assign you guys something super fun to do, something exciting. Thank you everyone for watching. If you guys want to support, join me on Patreon. I will be sending out a really, really cool reward this month for students. If you want to join, just go to istebrak.com. Open here. Go to istebrak.com to join me on Patreon. Click on the Support Me on Patreon link right here. And if you want the time-lapse videos, PSDs, free brushes, feel free to go there and join as an apprentice. Anyone can join, no skill level, max or minimum. It's all just pure education, and all the skill levels apply to all levels of your journey. Fundamentals are fundamentals, and basics will be around forever. If you want to buy Portrait Studio now, go to the store icon. Portrait Studio is what I use today. Or if you want to, you can wait for the sale in a couple of weeks, in a month, or a little bit more than a month, a little bit less than a month, depending on when the update is ready for launch. We will update it after the sale, and it will be at half the price, probably down to $45 or $50, which is really, really low for what we've put into it, but I still want people to have it. Tell your friends, tell everyone who might use it. It's a reference generation engine that allows you to create any scene ever, especially with the upcoming batch and grouped objects. It's just going to be colossal. It's all real time, no baking. If you want my brushes, they're all available here as well on my page. To join us on Reddit and submit for the current challenge. The current challenge on Reddit is a Harvest Goddess. It is a character design, but with a twist. It's got a limited palette. You can only use so many colors. And I've already assigned the colors. I've given you the colors. So this month's design challenge, Harvest Goddess, scroll down. I linked it here somewhere to a student. So these are the colors you're limited with using for your character design. This can be the skin tone of the goddess. She could be glowing. This could be her hair color. This could be her skin color here. This could be her dress color. And it's, again, limited background, slight indication. Please read through this. It's really, really interesting. I'm so happy to be back. I'm not going to be back for live until October 1st at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. I've already put up the event. Please tell your friends that we will be going live, anyone who wants to watch it, 5 p.m. Eastern. If you're in the Eastern Time Zone and you're free, hop in and ask some questions. I love the live effect. I don't like offline recordings because it really does feel like a class when we do an offline, online live class. An offline recording is just very sad. I don't feel like I'm talking to a group of people. And I kind of over-edit the videos. When I'm live, I kind of be a little bit more different, and I'm kind of more like relaxed when I'm, instead of my offline recording, video making self. Okay, so that is it. Thank you guys for coming in. And I will see you guys on the 1st of October at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Bye, guys.